Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pro Tour Talk with Steve Dodge. I'm Steve Dodge. Today is May 16th, 2018, and we will be talking with the ladies of the chains. Becca and crew started a new podcast, and we've invited them on to our podcast, sort of cross-pollinating, and it's going to be a pretty fun show talking about what they do and why they do it. But first, let's talk about a couple of things real quick. Next week, I think we'll have a very special guest at the San Francisco Open. We're going to talk with him and do a little SFO preview. The San Francisco Open is obviously the next Pro Tour event. It is the week after the Masters Cup, which is this weekend. But we've got three things to run through real quick, hopefully. We've got the fan vote, we've got news of the week, and we've got listener questions. First of all, the fan vote. So this was a very exciting week. Seth pointed out to me that the number of people voting continues to increase, which is fantastic. Everybody is very excited. They recognize that their vote matters, and getting people onto the fan card, onto the feature cards, is something that they have input on. And this week in the fan vote, on the men's side, Eric Oakley ran away with it with a total of 2,511 points. Well done, Eric Oakley. Drew Gibson, who's been playing hot all season, came in second. He will be on the, I think, the noon card. Yeah, then he will be on the noon feature card. Eric Oakley will be on the live card. And then Greg Barsby came in third with 1,394 points, and he will be on the 10 o'clock card, which will be the Central Coast card. So Eric Oakley, Drew Gibson, and Greg Barsby win the fan vote. Kevin Jones, Avery Jenkins, and Colton Montgomery made very impressive showings, but didn't quite have enough to get in the top three. On the women's side, Madison Walker runs away. Well, no, she does not run away with it. She does get the win, though, 1,438 fan vote points. She edges out Ellen Widboom and Jessica Weiss. I am excited to see those two women, especially Ellen Widboom, a new name on tour, and people obviously want to see her. So over the course of the season, I predicted earlier that we will see her in a fan vote, and it's looking like that's going to come true. It did not come true this time, but I believe it will. So the live card at the San Francisco Open, not at the Masters Cup, but at the San Francisco Open, the live card will be Ricky Wysocki, Eagle McMahon, Patrick Brown, and Eric Oakley. The Jomez card will be Paul McBeth, Garrett Gurthey, Jeff Faze, and Drew Gibson. Central Coast card, Nate Sexton, Simon Lizotte, James Proctor, and Greg Barsby. And the women's feature card, which will be on the Disc Golf Guy channel and the Pro Tour channel, is Paige Pierce, Sarah Hokum, Jessica Weiss, and Madison Walker. And that's actually a really good segue into the news of the week. And the first little bit of news of the week, I'll talk about that women's card for the first time ever. And we'll have to see how well we pulled this off. There's a lot of little wickets that have to line up perfectly, and then we have to hit the croquet golf ball right through all of them. But we are going to be attempting to have same day edited shot-by-shot coverage of the women. Specifically that women's feature card that I just mentioned. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that footage, we're going to edit it down, and then we're going to play it from 4 to 5 Eastern. That's 1 hour before the live broadcast starts. And then we will have 1 or 2 people doing live commentary as it gets pushed out to the internet. And you will be able to watch what is in fact a live feed of shot-by-shot coverage of the women, who will have literally just finished a couple of hours ago. So if everything goes exactly how it's planned, this is going to be a fantastic step in coverage in general, and especially coverage on the women's side. Excuse me. Additionally, what this will do on the live coverage, we will not have the women spliced in, and instead we will fill that time with whole reviews and some extra time in the booth where we will see Terry and friends in the booth doing the live commentary at the San Francisco Open. So that is one little exciting bit of news. Another bit of exciting news, we hired Danielle Charlier. She will be helping us with brand development, and she will work with us. There's a whole list of things, but she's a player liaison. She's helping with brand development. She's helping with some sales, and she's going to be a what is the word? A women's, I don't want to say, is it advocate? It might be advocate. I think it's not, though. She's going to help us focus and shape the way that we cover the women. So that's going to be another of her foci, plural focus. Look that up and post in the comments if that's right. My grandmother was a Latin major in college, actually. She would be embarrassed that I don't know whether it's foci or focuses. I think a camera focuses, but that's not the plural of focus. That's really interesting, or not. So another thing that we're going to be doing at the San Francisco Open, continuing along with the news, we will be filming every card on the women's side. And the goal here is to capture, I think there's going to be 6 women's cards, and we're naturally covering 1. And then Danielle, one of the things she does is live scoring, and she's going to be doing some filming of that card. So we've got 2 cards covered. With 4 volunteers, we will be able to capture basically every shot that all of the women do. And we'll compile those into a highlight reel that features every woman at the tournament. What we're going to do here, basically, women watching women encourages women to play. Lots of W's, and that's the way we like it. So, oh, and actually, we don't have all of those volunteers lined up yet. So if you would like to help, you can email Danielle, danielle@dgpt.com. If you're anywhere near the Bay Area and you would like to help cover the women or do anything at all at the San Francisco Open, if you want to spot, you want to park cars, whatever you want to do, feel free to reach out, Danielle@dgpt.com. She'll be able to hook you up and send you in the right direction. So, hello, Nova. Nice to see you.
Oh, glad I could finally make it.
Yes, absolutely. We will be with you in about 5 minutes.
Take your time.
Thank you very much. And then in addition to Danielle and the San Francisco Open, the shot by shot and the filming every card, there were 2 other little bits of news that we had. The first was we put out a piece about how to host a Pro Tour event. This comes up at this point, actually, it's coming up at least once a week, if not 2 or 3 times a week, people asking, hey, I would love to see a Pro Tour event in my neck of the woods. How do we make that happen? And so we went ahead and put out an article that says, here's our expectations for venues, and here's what venues can expect of us. And it actually also clarifies. A lot of people have the question of what does the Pro Tour do versus what does the event do? So while answering the question, how can I get a Pro Tour event, we're also answering the question, what does the Pro Tour do versus what does the venue do? And then at the bottom of that article, there's a link. You can just click that link, and there's a fairly lengthy application by design. We don't want it to be easy. We want people who are serious and take some time to think about things. Those are the types of people that we want running events. Excuse me. Goodness. I got a little bug right now. The last piece of really cool news, something called Now This Sports created a really cool piece that featured a whole bunch of disc golf highlights. They featured the Pro Tour. They talked about how the fact that disc golf is becoming a professional sport and is, and in my eyes, is legit. They also had the Jerry Seinfeld Frolf reference, where George had the Summer of George, and he played Frisbee golf, or Frolf as he calls it. So, and that video has been seen over 300,000 times. So they didn't quite get everything right. In my opinion, actually, they were a little too Pro Tour centric. Disc golf's been around for 40 plus years, formally. Obviously, we've been playing disc golf for thousands of years, probably with different objects and baskets or poles that we hit or whatever it is. But disc golf's formally been around for 40 plus years. They didn't quite get that right. And they focused entirely basically on the Pro Tour. And I think it would have been nice to see a more inclusive, like mentioning of the PDGA and mentioning of the grassroots movements that are in fact causing the sport to grow. But all in all, 300,000 more people know about the sport, and that's always a positive. So with that, we will get to the listener questions. We have 2 listener questions this week. The first is absolutely not disc golf related, but I thought it was a fun question, so I'm going to answer it anyway. It says, what is your favorite non-disc golf podcast? And I have to say that it's funny because I knew the answer to this while I was reading the question, but I'm going to go ahead and pull it up just to make sure I get it right. The first one is a podcast called On Being, and it's a brand new one that I started listening to, and the host just talks about how we should think about our lives and accept things and just be. And she has guests come on, and it's a really insightful podcast. Oh, and the other one is Left, Right, and Center. I like politics. So, and that one, I think they do a good job of balancing things out. So those are my two personal favorite podcasts. I've got about 30 or 40 in my queue, one of which is Ladies of the Chains. And I should have asked that question second, because that would have been a great segue, but I'm not that smart. So the next thing is, I should have done that, because the next question is, why are you filming every women's card? And we actually talked about that just a second ago. Basically, we want to show every woman on a highlight reel, and we want women watching women, which will encourage more women to play disc golf. So there's that. And that's actually not a bad segue into the Ladies of the Chains. And with that, I'm going to introduce Becca Kephart and Nova Polite. I hope I pronounced those names correctly, and I'll unmute you too. Here we go. Hello there, Becca. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And Nova, how do I pronounce your last name, Nova? Is it Polite?
Yeah, you got it correctly. It's polite, like whoop whoop. It's a sound of the polite.
I apologize. I'm pretty darn old. I don't know the whoop whoop sound reference.
It's a rap song from about 5 years ago.
Okay, my rap ended about 20 years ago, right before Dougie Fresh. So anyway, I hope there's some Dougie Fresh fans out there who have some clue what I'm referencing.
10 minutes and you're on.
So Becca, I want to start with you, and we can just jump in. Let's free form it and just have fun tonight. Basically, my goal tonight is to learn all about what you ladies are doing. And I almost said guys, because that's just slang, but what you ladies are doing and why you're doing it and how much fun it is. So sure. Becca, first of all, a podcast. I know that you saw that I made a podcast, so you decided, hey, if Steve can do it. But seriously, what made you decide you wanted to do a podcast?
Sure. So I'm a musician. I play and teach for a living, and I've got a background in sound engineering, and I also listen to a ton of podcasts. So when I kind of got into my mind that I wanted to start doing some music composition and sound design for podcasts, but then that kind of evolved into wanting to just do podcasts myself. And once I decided to do that, then as someone who past couple of years has become just very, very obsessed and engrossed in disc golf, I knew this was exactly the podcast that I wanted to do.
And I'll go ahead and say, I'm really glad you have an expertise in sound engineering. As you know, as it's clear to anybody who's listening, I do not. And it matters. The quality, and I'll say on the, when you guys do the commentary for Terry's round coverage, the commentary is one of the great reasons to listen, is because it just sounds so good. So yeah. You do a great job.
Oh, thank you.
And Nova, you came into this. I don't know how you got in, but let's hear your story and why you're a part of this.
I'll be glad to. First off, we didn't get a chance to do a sound check. Am I okay?
You are fantastic.
Outstanding. Thank you. Well, I'm reminded a lot of a Monty Python skit from the Flying Circus in the early 70s, where Eric Idle spent about 2 minutes doing a very florid introduction to a league footballer, just dropping philosophical reference after literary reference, etc. And then he turns to John Cleese and says, "What is your take on this?" And John Cleese is being John Cleese, and he says, "Well, I swung my leg, and next thing you know, the ball's in the back of the net." And I feel like that's what I bring to this this podcast. Becca is very much the brains of the organization, and I swing my leg, and the ball ends up in the back of the net.
Right where we want it. Who cares how it gets there? I will say I have listened to probably 4 or 5 of your podcasts and consistently enjoy it for sound quality and for content. And I think that you guys do a fair and balanced view of disc golf. Sometimes the disc golf world doesn't get women's coverage right, for example, and you guys go ahead and call it out. And sometimes they do. And sometimes it's not about that at all. It's just about, this is the way women need to think about the game and how women need to approach it. What is the overall goal of the podcast? I assume, I know we're all in this just for the money, but in addition to the money, what's the goal?
So I would say there's basically 3 goals of the podcast. The first one is to connect the women's disc golf community and connect them also with the greater disc golf community. We want to provide a woman's point of view on disc golf, and then to elevate women disc golfer voices of all kinds.
Okay, that makes very good sense. Elevating the women and making them aware and getting them out on the course. Nova, what do you, in your opinion, what are your goals, or do they mesh up exactly with what Becca just said, or do you have some additional thoughts?
It's very similar, but I think one of the interesting questions is when you're dealing with any group that is underrepresented, the common impulse is to say, well, if you're coming from a position of the majority, is to say, well, they need this, and they need this kind of help, and they need this, and they need this. And what really needs to be done is somebody needs to ask and say, what do you need? What helps? And if nobody's coming around and asking what helps, then the podcast is a good place to speak up and say, this is the kind of help we need, or this is what needs to happen, or this is what would be nice to happen. Mm-hmm. And with any luck, the people who are able to make things happen or to help make things happen are listening and are receptive, and we'll just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I genuinely appreciate that point. I'll go ahead and say, Nova, you just put the ball in the back of the net. I don't know how you did it, but nice job.
Well, thank you.
It's really interesting to me, because one of the things that happens, and I'm going to, as a human, I tend to think of everything as focused around me. And unfortunately, this podcast is not focused on me today. It's focused on you. But I'll go ahead and round that to me. Addie Maxwell put out a piece a couple months ago about how disc golf doesn't give enough coverage to the women. And I took that personally. That affected me and hurt me. And I had a couple of important women in my life. It's funny that men didn't see it this way, but a couple of important women in my life tell me, Steve, it's actually a positive that someone's complaining to you, because they know that you're going to listen. They know you're going to take it to heart, and they know you have an opportunity to actually do something. So once you get through that initial, gosh, my feelings are hurt, I was able to see it in a different light with some guidance. And it was absolutely a positive. Mm-hmm. And Nova, you nailed it right there with talk about, and have women do it, talk about what women need and what they want and how it's going to be better. So for anybody who hasn't listened to Ladies of the Chains yet, I highly encourage, go out and listen. Start with the most recent one, in my opinion, and work your way backwards, and they'll put out some new ones as you go. Mm-hmm. So, and actually, having said that, I was talking with Danielle earlier today. Danielle's our new brand manager and everything extraordinaire person. And we were actually talking about the podcast. And one of one of our favorite podcasts is where you guys talked about the mental game aspect for women specifically. And I thought it was a well done, well researched podcast. What is, in your opinion, what is your favorite podcast that you guys have done so far? Becca, I'll start with you.
It's like that.
What's that?
Pickle type situation. I will be in an episode that we did where it's been our most listened to, because I think we really hit on something there. And obviously that's not a genderized issue. We got to come at it from our perspective, but it really had a lot of good content that, you know, is really good for anyone. The GBO episode was really fun because I got to talk to a bunch of FPO players, and that was fantastic. So I don't know that I have a favorite out of what we've done. I'm always planning ahead. I've got the next 3 episodes planned, so I'm more of a forward thinker than a backward thinker for sure. It's been great so far, and the response has been really positive. I fully expected the disc golf community to be supportive because that's just been my experience. And we're incredibly lucky to be here in Kansas City because we just have a fantastic women's disc golf scene and community. We have a great, just greater disc golf community. So they've made it very easy for us to be able to do this and do this well.
I genuinely appreciate you saying I'm more of a forward thinker than backward looker. I resemble that remark, and it's really interesting to me. I look forward to about 15 to 20 years from now when I can sit on a boat and just look back and go, wow, that was cool. Yeah. But for the time being, I agree with you. Look forward. I don't even know who I talked to last week. If I could figure it out, but I don't know right now. But the GBO episode, you were clearly having a lot of fun, which is great. And that helps make everything work. So Nova, do you have a favorite episode that you liked being a part of?
Well, you know what I'm going to say. Honestly, Becca, can I spoil a guest that's been in the studio, but the podcast hasn't been out yet?
Absolutely.
I think the best episode is not yet in the can. I'm looking forward to hearing the interview with Cynthia Ricciotti of Columbia, Missouri. She's coming for us all. She's 15 and she's going to be beating the world in 2 years. I guarantee it. Mm-hmm. And I want to hear what she has to say.
Okay. I apologize. I don't know who Cynthia Ricciotti is.
Exactly.
All right, Becca, when does that come out? When does that hit?
So our next episode will be out on Monday. We're going to do a wrap up of the Women's Global event, our kind of experiences with that. We had just an incredible event here in Kansas City, the most attended out of all of the WGE events. We had 137 players. I'll brag on Nova here a little bit. She took down the advanced women's division in a playoff. It was a two-hole playoff. She parked the second hole for the drop-in birdie and the win. It was pretty epic. But yeah, just a really, really great experience here. But anyway, we're also going to be talking with a couple juniors. So one of those juniors is Cynthia Ricciotti that Nova mentioned, and then we'll be talking with Ava Meyer, who I believe is 9, about their experiences and just what we as a disc golf community need to think about to do to make sure that they can have the best success that they can. We'll have one of our local golfers here who's also a mom of a junior on the podcast to kind of talk about that in the future of disc golf. So yep, that'll be out on Monday.
So I don't want to spoil that at all, but I do want to tease people a little bit. That sounds really exciting. You've got a 9-year-old. Is the 9-year-old on the podcast?
We're going to be interviewing her. Yeah, we haven't interviewed her yet, but she'll be in this weekend.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have a 9-year-old, a 15-year-old, and the 9-year-old's mom.
Actually, it's a different mom.
A different mom.
Of a different junior, yeah.
But. Okay. So which is 3 really good perspectives in addition to Champion Nova.
Well, I rotate co-hosts.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah. So again, one of the goals of the that I have for the podcast, and it's just worked out really well so far, is to include as many voices as possible. We, you know, I love our FPO players. We have just fantastic women out on tour that are not only great players, they're great ambassadors of the sport. They carry themselves well. They're fantastic, and I want to hear from them. But we do have some disc golf media, at least, covering them. So I want to, you know, bring as many voices as possible, because to your point, right, about the more women we see playing, the more women will want to play. Also, the more women we see and hear from that are like us gives us that encouragement and inspiration to play. So I want to make sure that we're including just kind of the full gamut of what those women players look like. So anyway, we've got rotating co-hosts. So my friend Lupe will also be on this next episode. I have 2 co-hosts with me generally each podcast, and that just kind of changes depending on the topic, depending on who's available, and things like that. So,
okay. So I'll go ahead and mirror that comment. We have some fantastic women's pro FPO women. And the great thing is how gracious they all are with their time, and they're always willing to give more time. I try to take pictures every time I see one of them signing a disc for a fan or a kid, and or both. And it's really fun to watch them. Like they'll be about to go tee off, and a little girl will come up and say, "Can you sign my disc?" And they say, "Of course." And it's arguably bad for their competitive spirit, because they're in this place, but they never turn them down, and it's awesome. But having said that, again, the more, if we just watch Sarah or just watch Paige do this, then we think that those are the only 2 people. But when we see, and that's what we're trying to do at SFO, when we see a cacophony of women, 24 different women, all of whom hitting these putts, we think, oh, wow, this is everybody, and it's great. And so that's 100%. That's fantastic. So Nova, you are not on that episode, but my next question was actually going to be, tell us about your women's global experience. And I'll go back to Becca, but I want to hear yours first.
Oh, sure. Women's global event is actually kind of bookending my career at the moment, because the first tournament I played in 2015 was the Diva Spring FIVA, which is affiliated with the Women's Global event. 2015 is an odd-numbered year, so that wasn't a WGE year, but I think that still counts. I had started throwing discs at the park across the street about 3.5 weeks before that tournament. I jumped in because everything I do, I'm competitive. It's just how I roll. And so it was really fun to come back this year to that same event again. And it's to see how much larger it's become, how much more organized it's become, and yet to see how many things are still the same from year to year as well. It's the same spirit. It's the same fantastic tournament director, now tournament directors, because it's grown too large for any 1 or 2 people to handle. Some of the same old amenities and traditions are still carrying through from year to year, with the addition of some new and hilarious, in a good way, amenities this year. And it's been basically an ever upward arc of amazingness, if I can invent a word right there.
My mom says the same thing about me.
Well, she's got some skin in the game.
Yes, she does. And I arguably have less skin, and that's a joke Becca gets. But you said that it's been growing significantly. When you played it in 2015, how many people were there? Or women, I should. It's women only, right?
Women are people. Yeah. That's one of my superpowers, is I can state the obvious.
Go!
It was fewer than 90. I know that because it was at one course with one score point, and not every card was full. And it was 137 this year.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 pools of a maximum of 72, and a course that has 1 2/3 of a great disc golf course was cut up, recombined. A few safari holes were bolted on and turned into two very nice courses. I'd say about a 5,000 footer and about a 6,000 footer. And these were allocated pretty evenly based on skill level. So it flowed magnificently, and that's where the numbers were and where they are.
Nice. That's fantastic. So Becca, when you were at the Women's Global event, you guys are now obviously interviewing some kids. What percentage of the people at these events are kids?
So this was our largest junior field that has ever been at the Diva Spring FIBA, and there were 14 juniors. Okay. So yeah, one of Cynthia Ricciati was there as well. So she counts. We'll make her number 15, but she competed in advanced women.
Did she win advanced women?
No, that was Nova.
Yeah, that's right. I won advanced women.
Yeah.
Well, women are people. Okay.
Cynthia did win intermediate at GBO last year, and she came in second in advanced women this year at GBO.
Okay. So she lost in a playoff, I heard. No. Wait.
That was, yeah.
Okay, I'm getting my weekends mixed up.
You're all right. You're all right.
Don't count on it. Okay. So we heard Nova's experience at Women's Global. Let's hear your personal experience at Women's Global.
So my personal experience, I wasn't feeling very good and I played pretty terribly. So that wasn't awesome. But everything else was. Ben Crosby and Rhonda Crosby are tournament directors for this tournament, and they're just fantastic people. They do a good show for sure. Last year was my very first tournament, was this tournament, because it runs on the off WGE years as well, like Nova said. So it was, it's always just so exciting to see so many women out. A lot of women, this is their only tournament that they play each year, just because, you know, of their obligations or whatever the case may be, they make a point to make sure that they make it to this one. So very well run, a lot of fun amenities. Our support system here is so great. We had a ton of volunteers, a ton of guys came out. A guy I'd never met before carried my bag for me both rounds, and I have a very heavy bag, so that was extremely helpful. It was very cool. Shout out to one of our local pros here, David Potts. He brought a puppy, which was one of my favorite parts. I had, like I said, a pretty rough round, and at the end of my round, there was a puppy to cuddle with. I mean, that was fantastic.
Did he bring 130 of them?
I know, right? Like we have this tradition at the Spring FIBA of handing out roses at the end of the tournament, and I'd like to lobby for handing out puppies in future iterations of the tournament. I don't know who says no, right? So, but yeah, great tournament. So encouraging to see so many people there. Very cool to see some people that had heard about the podcast and just to kind of connect with people I knew by name or by Facebook. Just again, that community, it's just a wonderful thing. So
your puppy idea is both brilliant and awful.
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
If everybody would agree, maybe it should be a puppy adoption tournament.
There you go.
Jenny just got a new puppy, and she spent probably 4 or 5 months looking, and there are thousands of puppies and dogs looking for homes. I had no idea. And you could do that. You could bring 150 puppies to a tournament. Or I couldn't, but somebody with a lot of trucks could do that. So I want to get back to the podcast a little bit. And so you two are on the podcast, and Becca, you said that you have a whole bunch of different guests.
Yeah.
Did you know these people, the guests, beforehand, or did you learn about them and then, like, how did you guys meet and then decide to be a part of it?
So we met through disc golf. I very first played disc golf about 14 years ago. When I was 21, I played for a year, and then life kind of happened, and I just basically ended up taking a 10-year break. And then in 2016, I had driven by Rosedale, one of our popular courses here, and my dad was in town. I was like, hey, let's just go throw these discs that I still have around. Got totally addicted to the sport again. And fortunately, I came home, did a Facebook search, and immediately found our women's league here in Kansas City, the Kansas City Disc Golf Divas. So through that is how I met everyone. And once,
I apologize. I want to stop you. I try not to interrupt, but I'm going to forget this question.
Yeah.
If the women's disc golf divas did not exist, what would your experience have been going forward?
Sure. And when I played back in 2004, when I first found the sport, I never played with any other women. I played with my husband and a few of our guy friends, never really saw any women out on the course. And again, ended up taking this 10-year break. And I loved it then. I loved it, but it wasn't enough to kind of keep me engaged. So I don't know, it's something I've thought about for sure. I would probably not be at the level of addiction that I'm at, or involvement, certainly, without that. Obviously, I'm also benefiting from where disc golf media is at, because once I got back into the sport, here's all this coverage, right? And so it made it very easy to learn and to figure out better form and how to play and the rules and, all of that. So that certainly helped as well. But having, the other women to connect with was just fantastic. And kind of going back to my earlier point, I was kind of fans of Nova and Kim before I met them, because they kind of came to disc golf a little bit later, right? And they are just dominating right now. They're just tearing it up, playing so well, doing all of these things. So that gives me inspiration, right? That like, hey, maybe I can get better too, and maybe I can have success in the sport. And so, yeah, again, just ridiculously fortunate to be here, and to be here at a time where we have all of these women that I can, play with and look up to. And yeah, the podcast, all of these things probably wouldn't be a thing without our local league.
So, and that kind of ties into what Nova said earlier about if you want to know what women want, talk to women. And the fact that group, the Divas, existed is critical. And if you are in an area and there's not a lot of women playing, get your 3 friends that do play and form a disc golf group, and give the new women something that they can see and be a part of it. And yeah, you said it. It just makes
and that's the story we are hearing over and over again, whether I'm talking to an FPO player like Tina Stenidis, or any of our local players here. It's that women's leagues work. If you want to get women playing, if you want to get women engaged, that is such a big part of it. And, probably one of the best things that's happened since we started the podcast is getting those emails and those messages of, hey, there aren't women really playing in my area, but you know what? I listened to your podcast, I got inspired, and I'm going to go try and do this thing. And that's, ultimately what it's about. And it's very cool.
Yeah, I know that the Women's League up here in New England has helped that, and the numbers just keep growing, and it's really fun. They actually rotate around what courses they play in. It's super cool. Nova, oops. So I'm going to ask the same question of you, Nova, and then I'm going to put myself on mute.
Okay.
How did you meet?
It's like she said, it was at a KC Divas weekly Monday league at Rosedale Park, and I am not great at making friends, so it was a good time. I think in the time I've started playing disc golf 3 years and about a month or 2 ago, I've made more friends than I had in the rest of my adult life combined. And part of it was the shared activity. Right. But it's really interesting to me. There's a big cross section of players that for example, I play a lot of tournaments. That's my gig. I practice by myself or with Kim Janola at a course nearby, and then I show up at tournaments. And going to these leagues, it was really interesting to meet a lot of people who may not compete in tournaments, but they're there every Monday. They've got their bag, they've got their discs, they've got a lot of enthusiasm, and they are every bit as much a disc golfer as someone who competes in a tournament, or someone who has one disc that they're just slinging in a really big cargo pocket. And I think it was really important to get that exposure. And I think it's really important for new players coming into the sport to have a similar exposure where you can come together in a weekly league and see all sorts of players all playing disc golf. Might be different goals, might be different techniques, different ability, but everyone's playing disc golf and everyone's got a shared passion for the sport, and it's infectious.
Mm-hmm.
Nova, you are a fantastic addition to my podcast.
Oh,
I'm glad that you're here. And I couldn't have said that better, and I've tried. So thank you very much. The spirit of the game is why we're all here, and we have this crazy thing called disc culture that we are all we just soak it in, and it becomes us, and then we hopefully give it out to the rest of the world. Thank you for wording that so eloquently.
Oh my God, I was winging it. I have no idea what I just said.
Wait, you're not reading from a teleprompter?
No, I am so nervous right now. I'm in a daze. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch this just to see what I just said.
Well, that's funny because that's literally my next question. When the podcast started, and I wish I could do this thing with my camera, but you would just see the other side of the library wall. But my next question was, were you nervous when you started? And Nova, you're still nervous?
Oh, absolutely. I'm terrified of people.
I'm terrified of women, so it works out perfect.
Oh, well, it's okay. We're just people.
Exactly.
But anyway, I get what you did there.
There you go.
That took a second.
I'm going to jump over to Becca real quick. Becca, were you nervous when you started this podcast?
I mean, sure. There's some elements of that. I think my background as a musician and a performer comes into play, if that makes sense, that I'm used to being in front of a mic. I'm used to talking for a living, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always going to be some nerves. It's just like playing disc golf. Like, it's worth it, anything that crops up, you just kind of handle and deal with. But I've worked through it enough in other arenas. I wasn't too worried about it, if that makes sense.
So my last question for you is pretty open-ended, but when you guys do the commentary for Terry Miller, and if anybody, again, just like if you haven't seen listen to Ladies of Chains, go listen. But also they, Becca and friends, I don't know if it's the same people all the time.
It's Nova and Kim. Okay.
So they do the commentary for many of the FPO shot by shot runs that Terry Miller puts out under the Disc Golf Guy channel. Is that fun, or is that work, or is that both?
I would say it's certainly both. It's very fun, and it is a lot of work, but the work aspect of it just comes because we care so much, I would say. We put in a lot of work doing our homework, checking the UDisc stats, looking through the coverage, trying to just bulk up on as much knowledge as we can. And then after we're done recording, I go through it and I audio edit it and try to just make it, again, sound, as good as possible. But again, yes, it's a lot of work, but it's also just because we care and we want to really make it good. We can't hear you. We lost you.
I hit mute. Sorry.
Yeah, that's probably what happened.
Nova, what is your experience doing the commentary?
Well, Becca took 80% of what I was going to say, which is a shame because this is the question I've been looking forward to all night. No, I'm just throwing shade. It's okay. No, it is. It's a lot of pressure because, whatever we say that isn't cut on the edit is going to be out there pretty much forever. So there's a lot of pressure not to look like a fool, not to say too many times, not to bite the catchphrases of other commentators, because I'm not stoked when that happens.
Right.
But it basically just creates a work ethic. This fear of failure combined with the urge to excel and represent well, just naturally spurs on the research, the watching the coverage on a laptop in the passenger seat of a car on the drive to Becca's studio. I actually, when we're recording, the three of us are hunched around. I think it's a 15-inch MacBook Pro, and three people hunched around one 15-inch MacBook, and the video is in a window because there's also audio software up and running. So I'm over on the one side. I'm looking at the screen with one eyeball. If the disc is smaller than 5 pixels on the screen in that little window, I can't see it. So I'm working from notes that I made. So that basically I've already got a play-by-play of what every throw did. Nice. So that even if I can't see the video happening, I recognize, you know, the inch-tall player on the screen. I'm like, oh, okay, that's Sarah Hokum. And, you know, she threw a forehand and it went over on the right-hand side, but it just stayed in bounds. And so I already know what to say. I just try to sync it up with the fuzzy blob that's occurring over on the screen because I'm old and my vision is bad. But that said, I just made it sound like torture, but it's also a lot of fun because there's the pride in a job well done. And we all just, at the end of the recording, you could see everybody's shoulders drop and we all exhale and say, whew, okay, it's done. Becca, go edit. But, and so the pressure, I don't want to say it's pressure. It's sort of a shared responsibility. Everybody there, that goes for Kim, who can't be here today, as well, is each of us, I think, is striving to bring our A game for the other two. None of us seems to want to let the other down. And it shows that, like, when we come in and we get to the studio, we don't spend a lot of time messing around. We are unpacking bags and setting up spare laptops and getting out notes and getting headsets and mics positioned and playing with that little fuzzy podcaster screen thingy that I don't know what it does. I think it keeps the spit off the mic. I don't know. Becca tells me I'm wrong, I'm sure. But we get right to it. So in that regard, it's work, but it's a ton of fun. It really is. And a lot of the most fun stuff will never see the light of day. The really fun stuff is in outtakes.
The really fun stuff is stuck up in the head, and it's a memory, and it's why we do it. It's part of why we do it, because we get to hang out with our friends and make mistakes and laugh at each other and be social. So I'm gonna get ready to close on this, and I'm just gonna say thank you both for spending time with me and letting the world know a little bit more about you both and what it is that you guys are doing. I'll let you guys close with any closing comments or thoughts that you guys want to share. Encourage people how they can find Ladies of the Chains, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Becca?
Yeah, so certainly just thank you to everyone who's listened and who's reached out to us. We really appreciate it. All the positive comments, emails helps keep us motivated, helps keep us going. So you can find the podcast right now on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, any of the platforms that pick those up, as well as our website, ladiesofthechains.com. We generally come out with episodes every other Monday. And yeah, thanks so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Nova, any last words?
Oh, sure. I don't want to get into too much of a group hug, but I'm looking at what you're doing with the volunteers, doing video of every card out at the San Francisco Open, and my mind is blown. That is fantastic. You're doing a really good work there. Thank you very much. And I just forgot my parting thought. Give me 2 seconds. I'm not going to say no. That's gross.
You want me to edit this awkward pause out?
That's amazing. No, you can't do that. This is live. Nope, I've lost it. I'm going to just have to have regrets for the rest of my life. Thank you. Wait, I got it. That was good. Long enough. I got it. Thank you for having us, and thank you for listening and believing. More importantly, you listen, but you also believe. And that's important, because if somebody listens to you and then they tell you you're full of it, you're not going to get anywhere. So thanks.
Well, you're very welcome, Nova. And I really think the person you should thank is my mom. She trained me to be this way, and I really can't help it. And in passing off kudos, the idea for covering all of the women basically, I think this started at Waco and it's been germinating ever since, is 100% Danielle. Danielle came up with this idea, and she started to film the women while she was doing live coverage, and she'd get some really nice putts and post them. And it just sort of grew and grew. And a conversation between her, Sean Jack, and myself, and this just came from that. And but I'm very confident the idea itself was Danielle's, and she had some way of planting it in our brains. So
Well, thank you, Danielle.
yes, 100% thank you, Danielle. So with that, thank you both, and thank you all for watching. This has been another edition of Pro Tour Talk. We had Ladies of the Chains on tonight, and this was one of my favorite episodes. Thank you all. Sleep well. We'll see you next time.